And I would like to show you some results of my work during the PhD, which focused on changes in vegetation and flora of the Czech Republic. Not going to work. So just a brief introduction. As many of you already know, the natural ecosystems are changing over the last decades, mainly due to anthropogenic pressures, including land use changes, eutrophication, or climate changes. And plants represent the primary components of these ecosystems as primary producers. And thus they are very important. So my question was, how is vegetation and flora in the Czech Republic changing over the long term? And I had 3 aims for this PhD thesis. The first one was to examine the local changes in vegetation based on new resurveyed studies, which will be conducted in places where no such study were available yet, and then include these studies into a large database, which will also contain data from other people, to be able to analyze the changes in the whole Czech Republic based on resurvey data. But first we had to collect the data, so there were already some data available, but I also contributed there my own data and also contributed with some data already in the databases, but not marked as resurvey data, or digitized some data from existing literature. And tried to ask some people who have these data if they would be so kind to provide us their data so that we can include them in our analysis. And the third aim was to explore trends in the whole flora based on the analysis of floristic data. So I will now go through these 3 aims one by one and start with the regional resurvey vegetation studies. First of all, I would like to show you results of 2 studies of dry grasslands in South Moravia. The first one for the first one, the field sampling was done by Martin Harásek, who sampled vegetation plots first sampled by Milan Chytry, and I helped them with analysis of the data. And for the second one, I collected the data myself. So I will now try to compare these 2 resurvey studies. Here you can see the map where the localities of our resurvey vegetation plots were. The first one is the study of acidophilous dry grasslands, which was first sampled in both these studies contain data that were first sampled in 1980s and then resampled around the year 2020. And they are from acidophilous dry grasslands and then basophilous dry grasslands in South Moravia. We also had approximately half of the plots in protected areas, or in areas that became protected between the year of the first sampling and the second sampling. And half of the plots was in areas that were not protected at all. So we were also able to compare changes in protected areas and outside of them. And what did we identify here was a decline in species richness overall. Also a decline in dry grassland specialists, as for example Carlina acaulis or Asperula cinanchica in basophilous grasslands, or also Prunella grandiflora. And also a decline of threatened species. In the acidophilous dry grasslands it was Armeria elongata, or in basophilous grasslands Pulsatilla grandis and some other. And what was increasing over time were some alien species, among them Arhanaterum elaceus, spreading mostly in acidophilous dry grasslands, but also increasing in basiphilous grasslands. And then Erigeron annus, for example, which was increasing in basiphilous dataset. And we also looked at the differences between protected areas and outside of them, and we realized that all these trends were more pronounced outside protected areas than in protected areas, although we see also some trends in protected areas. And then we also looked at changes in Ellenberg type indicator values and indicator values for disturbances. And what did we identify there was an increase in nutrients in both these data sets. And in basiphilous grasslands, it was more pronounced outside protected areas again. And then for acidophilous dry grasslands, there were not so many more changes. The only significant other was an increase in disturbance severity, which was more pronounced in protected areas than outside of them. But this was probably more related to extreme drought in the given year of the resurvey. And in the basiphilous grasslands, there we see more changes in indicator values, and mainly a decline of species which are light demanding, also thermophilous species, and an increase in moisture indicator values. I would just like to comment on this because it's not probably due to increase in soil moisture, but probably due to the correlation of nutrient indicator values with the moisture indicator values. And there was also a decline in indicator values for disturbance frequency. So to conclude this part of the presentation, there were multiple factors probably contributing to the changes in dry grasslands of South Moravia. Among the most important were probably land use changes and then following natural succession, eutrophication, and spread of alien species, especially Arhanaterum elaceus in the acidophilous dry grasslands. And unfortunately, protected areas or the conservation management currently ongoing in protected areas was not able to fully stop these negative processes, but is really needed for at least slowing down these processes. Then I would like to show you also results of from other habitats, which are sand grasslands in the Pannonian Basin. The vegetation plots that I used for this vegetation resurvey study were located around the borders of Czech Republic, Austria, and Slovakia. And there were from multiple sources, and they were also first sampled at different times, from 1950s to 2010. And then I resampled them with the help of other colleagues in 2023 and 24. Those were plots from three vegetation types: pioneer sand vegetation, acidophilous and rudderalized sand grasslands, and basiphilous sand grasslands. And the results were in species richness somewhat contrasting to the dry grasslands that I showed before. The species richness in these plots was increasing over time, but there was a similar pattern in the specialist species, where we see a decline of sand specialists, as for example, Yacione montana, Cynodon dactylon, or Thymus serpyllum, and also a decline of dry grassland specialists, as for example, Pimpinella saxifraga, Phleum phalloides, or Festuca valesiaca. And what was increasing were species that might be classified as ruderal species, And those were, for example, Erigeron anus, also spreading in this habitat, Geranium pusillum, Bromus hordaceus, or Calamagrostis epigeos. And if we look at the Ellenberg type indicator values or indicator values for disturbance, then we see a similar story. There was an increase in indicator values for nutrients and moisture, but a decline in species adapted to higher grazing pressure and thermophilous species. So again, this is probably due to land use changes and natural succession. So I will now move to the second aim, which will deal with the data from the Resurvey Czechia database, which is a subset of a larger database called Resurvey Europe. And as you can see in the map, the current coverage of the Czech Republic is quite nice. We have plots from different vegetation types, and overall we have their data from 99 resurvey studies, more than 4,000 time series, which mean one vegetation plot resampled multiple times over time. And that sums up to approximately 24,000 vegetation plot records. I used these data to identify changes in the whole vegetation of the Czech Republic. And what is nice about vegetation plot data, that we can assign them to habitats. So I selected only non-forest vegetation plots from this Resurvey Czechia database and classified them into 9 different broad vegetation types, which were the alpine and subalpine vegetation, springs and mires, wetlands, wet meadows, mesic meadows and pastures, nardus grasslands and heathlands, sands and shallow soil vegetation, dry grasslands, and ruderal and weed vegetation. The classification was made according to the first survey of the given plot. And then we needed some measure of the trend in the time series. So here you can see one vegetation plot which was sampled over the last 30 years. Approximately, it was almost every year, just 1 year is missing here, I think. And here every dot there represents the Ellenberg type indicator values for nutrients, and it's the mean for the given plot. We did this for all the time series and many different characteristics, and as the measure of the trend, we used this linear trend overlaid over the whole time series. And then recoded these trends to 1 if the trend was increasing, and 0 if the trend was decreasing. So that we can then test if the proportion of increasing or decreasing trends was significantly higher or lower than expected by chance. The null expectation would be that there is like 50% of increasing trends and 50% of decreasing trends. And here are the results. So the line here on 0.5 represents the null expectation, and here you can see for species richness that in most of the habitats the species richness is increasing over time. There are more increasing trends than we would expect. For evenness, the results were not significant for many of the habitat types, but there was an increase in alpine and subalpine vegetation and in spring and mire vegetation. But we looked also at different characteristics, and I will show you just a summary here, where I will show just the significant trends, and it's you can read it as here in the row, in each row is one characteristic. Each column represents one vegetation type, and the red triangles pointing down mean that there is a significant decrease over time, and the blue triangles pointing up mean a significant increase over the last 60 years. And we identified here that there was a significant increase of woody species in most of the habitats, and also an increase of grasses. Increase in competitively strong species, and also species that have bigger leaves and which are overall higher. Whereas we identified a decline of stress-tolerant species which are adapted to specific conditions. Then we also looked at the plant pollination syndrome, where we identified a significant decline of insect-pollinated plants. There was also a decline of habitat specialists and threatened species, but an increase in species successful in colonization of new habitats. And lastly, I would like to show you the results for Ellenberg indicator values. And there we found a decline of light-demanding species, but an increase in nutrient-demanding species. But there are also some trends that were habitat-specific. For example, if we look at moisture, then we see a decline in habitats that are moisture-related. Those are wetlands and springs and mires, but we see an increase of moisture indicator values in dry grasslands, which might reflect some kind of homogenization in our landscape. And it's also reflected in the leaf anatomy, where we see a decline of species adapted to very moist conditions, with helomorphic leaves, but also a decline of species adapted to very dry conditions in dry habitats especially, but an increase of species with mesomorphic leaves in the middle of the spectrum. So to sum it up, we identified no change or an increase in species richness in most habitats in the Czech Republic, but there were significant changes in taxonomic and functional composition, which might be caused by eutrophication, abandonment of traditional management, and following natural succession. But there were also some habitat-specific trends where in wetlands and springs and mires, drought is probably also an important factor, whereas the other habitats were more affected by probable abandonment of traditional management, which in ruderal and weed vegetation sands and dry grasslands is pronounced as more pronounced increase of trees and shrubs, whereas in these other habitats it's more about grass encroachment. But when we analyze the resurvey studies, we also have to think about possible biases that are influencing our data. And there are not only those many times discussed, like relocation error or observer error, but we can also, let's say, resample the vegetation plots in a wrong year. Which means we select especially dry or especially wet year in the series of, let's say, normal years, which might result in a different trend estimation. So let's imagine a time series where we have multiple plots and we resample them this is a time series where we resample the plots each year. But in resurvey studies with 2 observations, we only have the start year and then some year that we select to resurvey the plots. And in this case, for example, the trend might be overall increasing, but if we select to resample our plots in this particular year, then our trend estimation might be completely the opposite. So we focused on this together with Kristof Chytry, and we tested if when we select each particular year in a time series that is composed of plots resampled every year, then in which proportion of cases would this trend from 2-point resurvey study align with the long-term trend? And what did we realize is that in the case of species richness, there is a tendency to overestimation of the trend in 2 times resurvey studies. And only in 50% of cases, this time series aligns with the long-term trend. Whereas it's much better for the species composition change. In abundance-based turnover, the alignment was 86%, and for occurrence-based turnover, it was 90%. So to move to the last part of this presentation, I will focus on the analysis of floristic data, which was this article. And it was based on the data from the Pladias database, which currently contains more than 15 million of records about plant species distribution in space and time. But these data were never collected systematically. There are some biases in space, but also the temporal coverage is not perfect. So we have to use some complex modeling techniques to account for these biases. So we collaborated on this together with Michael Glaser from the University of Vienna. And we used a so-called occupancy model, which estimates the occurrence probability of the given species in the grid cell based on its occurrence records, time, sampling effort estimate, and the data source. And because these models are run within a Bayesian framework, they are really time demanding. So I was really grateful for an access to Metacentrum, which is a grid with many computers and high computational power, which enabled this study to be performed. So after we run this complex model, then we can get a result like this, where here we can see an estimated proportion of grid cells in the Czech Republic occupied by the given species in each 5-year interval. So we can see then if the species is decreasing over time as, for example, Antennaria dioica, or increasing as Erigeron anus. If you are more interested in trends of individual species, then you can look in the Shiny app for them. I will just focus on the species that are most increasing or decreasing over time. And among the most increasing species, we see already mentioned Erigeron anus and many other neophytes, as for example, Impatiens parviflora or Senecio inequidens. But also some ruderal species like Lactuca seriola or native grasses like Festuca arundinacea. On the other hand, among the most decreasing species, there were many specialists of traditional management, like Antennaria dioica, or also some major species, like Parnassia palustris or Eriophorum latifolium. We were also interested which plant characteristics or species characteristics might be responsible for this increase or decrease over time. So I will show you here multiple characteristics that we looked on, and here the given characteristic is always on the x-axis, and on the y-axis we have the the estimated trend of the given species. And the increasing regression line here means that the higher value of the given characteristics, the higher probability of the species increase. So here we can see that there was a significant increase in competitively stronger species. Stress-tolerant species were rather declining over time. There was a significant trend towards higher indicator values for nutrients. Nutrient-demanding species were increasing. There was also a slight increase in Ellenberg-type moisture indicator values. We identified an increase of species adapted to stronger disturbances, and species that were that are more able to colonize new habitats. And the more specialized the species is, the more likely it is to decrease over time. But it's not always just about linear trends. So I was also curious if we can identify some differences in species trends. And therefore, I performed a time series clustering algorithm to group together the trends of individual species and see if there might be some differences. So here on the right side, you can see each line representing the trends of individual species, just with just all the species trends are standardized so that we can compare trends of species that were differently common. And the box plots show the trends that are just summarized and not standardized, so that we can also compare how common the given group of species was. And we can see here that in the first group we have species that increased most in 1960s to 1980s and then remains more or less stable. This group includes mainly generalists, strong competitors, species with higher colonization ability, adapted to stronger disturbances and higher nutrients. Then there is a second group which contains species that increased most between 1980 and 2000. And these were compared to species from the other groups, more shade tolerant, adapted to not such strong disturbances, and there was a higher proportion of shrubs in this group. The third group includes species that were more or less really rare in the whole period, but then increased significantly in the last 20 years. And these were thermophilous species with higher proportion of neophytes and annual species. Then we have a group of species that increased over the whole 60-year period, which were generalists, strong competitors, species adapted to not so common disturbances, higher moisture and nutrient indicator values, and they were also shade tolerant. But we have 4 groups of increasing species, but only 1 group of decreasing species, and their which includes species that were specialists, poor competitors, adapted to frequent but not so severe disturbances that we can imagine as grazing or mowing, for example, and preferring nutrient-poor conditions. There were also more threatened species in this group. So to sum it up, the presence of different groups of species with increasing trends suggests that there were multiple factors contributing to the changes, which were differently important over time. In the first 20-year period between 1960s and 1980s, there was probably higher impact of eutrophication and anthropogenic disturbances. Then the increase of shrubs and shade-tolerant species in 1980s to 2000s might reflect an effect of abandonment of traditional management, and then an increase in thermophilous species and neophytes from warmer regions might suggest an effect of climate change in the last 20 years. On the other hand, we have only one group of decreasing species, which are decreasing continuously over the whole 60-year period, which might be due to gradual decline of habitat quality after the abandonment of traditional management. So to sum it up, we identified significant changes in the Czech flora and non-forest vegetation over the last decades. There were more pronounced changes in functional and ecological characteristics than just in the diversity indices. And there were multiple factors contributing to the changes in different periods and different habitats, and the most threatened are habitat specialists. In the end, I would like to thank many people in this room, many people who helped me with this work, and also all botanists who collected data in the field and contributed them to the database so that I could work with this wonderful data. And thank you for listening.